because of the images that I was given more of in media, I thought that I didn't fit into what a queer Black woman looked like.
Hi, I'm Gracie Mercedes, and welcome back to Not Blank Enough, a podcast about everyday insecurities and triumphs. In this episode, I'm talking with Zuri Adele, a Black queer actress most known for her portrayal of Malika on Freeform's Good Trouble. We spoke about what it was like to be raised an only child on both the West and East Coast, the unique way her mom embraced her bisexuality, how she almost gave up acting before hitting her big break, and much, much more. I hope you enjoy this intimate conversation we titled Not Queer Enough. Hi, Zuri. Welcome to Not Blank Enough.
Yes, hello. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to talk to you because we really only know each other through Instagram, but I feel like we have a million friends in common. So I'm not sure how we haven't met before in person.
I know. And we shared Good Trouble too. So, we missed each other in passing, and then, we got to see each other on the same pilot, which was it was monumental.
I should tell our audience that Zuri is one of the series regulars on Good Trouble, which is a TV show on Freeform, and she's amazing, and you should check it out. And I got to do a couple lines on the first episode, the pilot episode. And of course, every other series regular was on set that day except you.
Yes, of course.
Of course. So I didn't get to meet you then either. But I'm so glad to have you. Let's start with telling me a little bit about yourself and your upbringing.
Ooh, when you say not blank enough, I mean, there's so many that can change even in the day with all of our intersectional identities, which definitely leads me to thinking about my upbringing. I grew up mostly in the Bay Area. And before that, I was born in Boston. And then when my parents split, my dad moved to New York and my mom moved to the Bay Area in California. So I grew up going back and forth between their households. So, and as an only child, bi-coastal experience, growing up around a lot of different traditions, cultures, lifestyles, and just kind of being in melting pots, both in Brooklyn and in the Bay Area. And that really underscored this sense of oneness, and also this sense of a passion for collective liberation, which is something that my parents have always been really passionate about, equality for all. And I feel like that underscores a lot of my calling, and even where I've been called as an actor in terms of using my voice and body as a social, political tool to tell stories. So yeah, all of my education was centered on theater. And so I was always a performance artist as a kid. My parents are very creative. My family's very creative. So I was very encouraged to tap into that form of expression for storytelling. And then I went to Spelman College. I went to historically Black women's college, and I studied theater there, which was now I can tell it was such a unique way to learn theater through the perspective of the oppressed, through the perspective of women's contributions, through the perspective of knowing that Black history started well before slavery, history of the entire African diaspora and all of the innovations that we brought to the world that I didn't learn in my westernized textbook education.
None of us did.
And also none of us did. And also learning more about the civil rights movement from women's perspectives, from queer perspectives, perspectives that weren't always taught or given the forefront of the voice to. I also studied acting in graduate school at UCLA, which is what brought me out to LA after living in Atlanta. Okay. And so I've been in the theater world, and more recently in the past few years have been working in television on Good Trouble, which is one of our many paths that you and I have crossed without meeting in person, just so Spirit can keep telling us how kindred we are.
It's like random conversations will happen and someone will say Zuri, and I'm like, they're like, Zuri, right? I'm like, oh man. I'm like,
people just assume that we know each other because they know we're so, I love it.
Wow, it sounds like you had a really beautiful, diverse, kind of open-minded upbringing, which is rare, I feel like, in this country, especially for Black women or women of color in general.
Yeah.
Within that, was there any moment of feeling any type of not enoughness in that environment, or did you feel pretty confident and great in yourself all the time? Is that possible?
Oh, I felt so not a lot of things enough. I was in Palo Alto, which is a pretty white bubble, Silicon Valley in the Bay. So, I mean, while a lot of people were there who were from very international backgrounds, like at Stanford, in the area, in terms of school, I felt like I was representing for I was one of very few Black people at school. Right. And when I would go to visit my dad and family in Brooklyn, they would have these thick Brooklyn accents or thick Caribbean accents. There were a lot of different representations of Blackness, like from all different, from the Caribbean, from Africa. And I wouldn't feel Black enough in that space because I had a cadence that was similar to not only just like a California suburban upbringing, but also a very white-centered upbringing. So, socially at school. So, and then when I would go back to Palo Alto from Brooklyn, I would kind of come back with like this thick Brooklyn accent. I just spent the summer with my family and they were like, where are you from? So my accents have always been kind of strange. Never felt quite Cali enough, quite West Coast enough, quite East Coast enough. And especially at that time, there was all this East Coast, West Coast, like you had to choose. And I never felt like enough of either of those.
That's so fun. That's an interesting comparison because I mean, I grew up in New York and that was such a big deal, like Biggie versus Tupac, You had to choose a side.
It's a big deal. I was anxious. Exactly. Yeah. And then I would even say in my queerness as well, I've never felt queer enough to feel like I was representing the LGBTQ community at first because of the representations that were on screen, but also me not fully putting vocabulary to my bisexuality, feeling like this flowy California girl and not even labeling it for myself as like deserving to label myself as queer when I'm, already Black or already East Coast or already West Coast.
A woman.
Already a woman, already the theater person, theater nerd. It was like, all right, how many more, and
how many more labels can I have?
Yeah, and also as someone who's feminine presenting, like I wasn't assumed to be LGBTQ. So that was where more, because of the images that I was given more of in media, I thought that I didn't fit into what a queer Black woman looked like.
Because there's such a stereotype of what that looks like.
Yeah, being masculine presenting. Yeah.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit more because I do feel like there is a lot around being or labeling yourself or coming out as bisexual. A lot of times people, especially I think for men, but I think also for women, it's this thing where, no, you're just gay. You're just saying that you're bisexual.
Yeah.
Or you're a woman. You're just kissing a girl. You're not actually, you don't actually care about being a lesbian or whatever the case may be. I just feel like there's all these like stereotypes surrounding being bisexual and or people not quote unquote believing you in a sense.
Right. It's constantly written off as a phase, especially for millennials. Like, oh, you millennials, you just try everything. You love everybody. Rather than it being taken seriously that I can really develop strong romantic connections with people of all genders. And I'm really proud of that. Something that also has come up is like the fetishization of being bisexual and like, oh, that means that you have a lot of threesomes. Like, can we have a threesome? Can we do this? Or what types of, making it all about sex and all about lust rather than
connection,
an actual connection. And also feeling like you must be 50% gay and 50% straight to be bisexual. And it's not that. It's just being 100% bisexual. Like if I'm in a relationship that looks hetero, a relationship with someone who presents as a man or masculine, I'm not automatically assumed to be LGBT. And then if I'm in a relationship with a woman, then I'm not necessarily perceived as bisexual either. I might be perceived as gay. And so sometimes there's like a battle of erasure. And then there's also this battle of, within feeling like we shouldn't have to announce anything,
Right.
Like,
Right.
if I'm in I shouldn't have to I think with what I'm saying is like, often with bisexuality and pansexuality, it feels like there's this constant coming out, like, oh, she's straight again, oh, she's gay again, oh,
my God,
and that's, when I say the 50% versus 100%, yeah.
And do you feel like you get that from both the heterosexual and queer community, or is it heavier from one side or the other?
Ooh, I think I get it from both.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it feels more vocal from the queer community.
Oh, interesting.
Which is interesting, yeah, because I don't know why that is, but or maybe because it feels like there's more permission to call me out on it, because it'll be someone who is like a fellow member of the community.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. And so, okay, how did you always know you were bisexual, or was there like an awakening for you with that? Like, how did you figure that out? And did you quote unquote come out, or was it just something that it was like, this is what I am kind of thing?
I didn't always have the vocabulary for it. I didn't always know that I was bisexual, although I knew that I was romantically and sexually attracted to people of all genders. And yeah, I didn't label myself as queer until probably college, when I was about 20, 21. I think I stepped into that more, but it wasn't until even after graduate school, like I was probably 26 when I dated a woman and was public about it. Like our relationship was just more serious, so I was more public. That's when I think there was more labeling on me as queer. Like it was just, that seemed to be like publicly me expressing that I was queer, when I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but that is definitely what I was doing, because I had most of my serious relationships before her had been with men. So I was never assumed to be queer.
Right.
And I didn't have a coming out moment with my family either. It was just like when there was a serious enough relationship with a woman and I brought her around like for the holidays, or there was something on social media, like that was kind of just how family figured it out. And in my upbringing with especially with my mom, she would always ask me about people, like if I were talking to her about someone I had a crush on or just a story from school, she would, and especially if it was someone I had a crush on, the way she would ask me questions is she would say like, do they have brown eyes or blue eyes? Are they tall? Are they short? Are they a boy? Are they a girl? Are they, do they have long hair, short hair? Like boy, girl was thrown in the middle in a way that I didn't even notice when I was younger. It always let me know that there was nothing to announce.
That's such a beautiful thing. I mean, wow, props to your mom, because that is so rare. And for her to just kind of like sneak it in there, like, hey, boy or girl, nonchalant. It's fine either way.
Exactly. So that's why I never really came out. I do understand that there was a choice that I made to be publicly very vulnerable in a queer relationship in a way that I hadn't prior to that. And I know that felt in a way like a step, an additional step of coming out. Yeah.
Wow, that's so great. I mean, I love your mom. I've never met her, but now I love her.
I know. She's amazing. And she's always like announced her pronouns, or she's put her pronouns in her email signature. Oh, wow. Like those were just things that, she's just always, she's never made anything a big deal.
Yep.
And because of that, I never thought of anything like that as a big deal. It just seemed like the right thing to do, or natural. Yeah. Like she was letting me know that it was natural.
Yeah, she gave you like ideal modeling. Like, yes, this is how I react to the world, so this is how you will probably react to the world.
Yeah.
She should teach a class on parenting.
She's pretty good.
So then let's talk about Good Trouble.
Yes.
This is your first big like series regular, correct?
Oh yeah, first series regular.
Tell me the story.
Girl, oh the story, the journey. Um, no, I mean I'm so grateful. It's such a reminder that like the perfect job is really being crafted for us, and the perfect work family as well, the perfect character that we need to embody to unpack some of our own stuff as well. And yeah, the story with Good Trouble, when I graduated from graduate school, I had been in academia for so many years that I definitely thought that like I was such a boss in terms of being an actor, being classically trained, having done all these, classical roles and taken all types of different classes. And I still had so much to learn about just simply being present in the moment when playing a human being rather than performing. And I bring that up because my journey to booking a job in television felt really long, considering that like I graduated from grad school and I had seen, Lupita Nyong'o graduate from Yale and win an Oscar within like a year.
Yeah,
after.
I mean, but she's like the exception.
Of
She's
course.
like the outlier.
Oh
That never
yeah.
happens.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And like, but I guess I was just like, well, other friends in other fields that are more corporate, they graduate and then they get a great job. They get like that
Right.
was like my world in academia, and I would see that for them. And I was like, well, okay, that's going to happen. Like, I'm going to,
Right.
I made it all about the outside things and what I was going to get and how it was all going to pay off immediately, rather than knowing that, like, I still had several years in LA after grad school to be a freshman in the world and to learn techniques that were so different for television versus theater.
Right.
I mean, so different. I needed the master classes. And it was really when I was getting ready to throw in the towel.
Oh my God, isn't that always when it happens? I feel like so many people have that story. Right when you're about to give up, the universe is like, wait, hold up.
I was like, throw it all away. I don't want any more of this. And oh man, I mean, auditioning can be brutal. Putting so much, it's so exhausting, and you're not getting paid to do it, and then you're working so many hours to pay your bills. There's a lot of exhaustion and a lot of heartbreak. And I had started teaching yoga, and I was really enjoying it. And the yoga studio where I was working had just opened a studio in Paris.
Oh, wow.
And I was also working with this theater group that was touring. I had made this plan, I was like, well, after the tour, like we were going to end in New York, and, I would see some family, and then I was going to move to Paris and teach yoga. And just,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like, I think there was just one final audition that I didn't get. And also it was an ego check because a lot of these auditions were just, a couple lines, a quick guest spot, a day player spot. And it was like, okay, instead of doing all these like long theatrical monologues, like there was something that I felt like I wasn't enough if I wasn't able to even book these roles.
The one-liners.
To be like, yeah, the one-liners.
Which I honestly think are harder. Like,
yes.
It's so funny because like it's like
they're so much harder.
Girl, I went through that. I have 10 co-stars on my resume right now, so I know all about it. It's like
yeah,
even up to like 4 or 5 lines. Like it's so hard to pull that off sometimes because you're just like, well, who is this character?
Yeah.
And they never give you like
no backstory. Yeah.
You're lucky if you even get the full script. So usually it's just the page that you have, the page that your lines are on, and that's
that
it. Make it all up.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes those are tricky because you know your job is basically there to just deliver information to help the rest of the actors go along with their day kind of thing. But
which is so important.
It is important, but it does feel I mean, there's so many layers to it. It feels, one, very hard to do, and then 2, when you do it, I have to say for myself at least, it's almost more of a bummer because you're so grateful for the work and you're so grateful to be on set, but it's almost like a tease because you're on set, you say your couple of lines, and then you leave and you're just like, oh, but I had so much fun. I mean, I honestly had that experience on that pilot episode of Good Trouble. Like,
I'm sure.
That cast, you guys are amazing. Yeah, it was the first day of shooting. Everyone was super excited, and it was like being a part of this like new beginning.
Yeah.
And saying my one line and leaving. And I was like, no, I want to stay. I want to play with you guys all day long. So yeah, I think that stuff can be crushing, and it's really hard, and it's, you know, it's how we pay our dues. But after a while, you're just like, oof.
Yeah, I was like, you know what?
More.
I want a plan that I can see a little bit more. And kind of as soon as I had also just moved through a really hard breakup romantically with my partner at the time. So I was ready I was just heartbroken in many ways. And it was right then when I was finishing up the LA portion of the theater tour that I was in that this audition for Good Trouble came in. It was untitled. It was an Untitled Foster's spinoff. And I went to the audition. And you know what? I loved the script. I didn't have attachment to it because I was so surrendered to like this new plan. And yeah, I auditioned and then I got a call back. And, you know, I think there were 2 or 3 more callbacks, and which included a couple of test sessions. So it started to feel more and more real. And that was around the end of April that year, and we were going to start filming in June. So even with that, it was so secretive at that time that then I found out and booked it, and my life was completely changed. And at the same time, we hadn't filmed yet, so my life didn't change yet. Like, we hadn't been, like, financially, my life wasn't going to change for several more months. And, like, but it was just like, whoa, this big thing just happened. And I couldn't tell a living soul.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't tell my parents. I could not tell a living soul about this huge accomplishment.
I can't believe you kept that secret from your parents. That would be so hard for me.
Well, listen, I didn't want to lose the job.
Yeah, you don't want to jeopardize the big break. That would be.
Yeah. And my reps were like, we have news and you cannot tell a living soul. And so we just celebrated within one another. But yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my God, I just got chills. That's just so exciting.
And it was so worth the wait. I mean, it felt like a long wait and journey, and it really wasn't in so many ways now that I look back. Yeah.
And then tell me about your character on the show. And are there like parallels and similarities between you and Malika?
Yes. Yeah, Malika. Oh my gosh. I love Malika. I have so many what would Malika do moments in my life now. I'm so grateful for her. She is a former foster kid. She's currently a college student studying social anthropology at Occidental College, and she's an activist, and she is a member of Black Lives Matter. She's really passionate about social justice, particularly about Black liberation as a means for collective liberation. That is where we have so much in common. I'm pretty sure, you know, I wore, to my audition, I wore a t-shirt that says Black is Forever. And, you know, had my afro and had like my booty shorts on. And yes. And I think it was like, okay, it's clear that Malika and I have very similar morals and a similar sense of purpose to fight for our people as a means of fighting for all people.
And is Malika queer on the show as well?
She's not.
Oh, she's not.
No,
okay.
She's not. Yeah. As far as we know now, you know, we'll see.
Right. Things could change.
As she's never identified as queer, but she's never like said she's straight. She's only dated men so far.
What's going on with that now? I guess because of all the COVID stuff. You guys are in what season?
So we were just about to get started on our 3rd season. And and that was right when the shutdown started. We had filmed just a few days. I filmed for one day, and we shut production down until further notice. So when we do return, we'll be filming our 3rd season. For now, it's a waiting game. We're waiting until, you know, these COVID numbers go down so that it can feel safe. I mean, we're so physical. We're doing even in the hair and makeup chair with the hands on your face, but also just like, you know, we're kissing each other. We're doing all types of things and working in close proximity with the crew. So it does have to be safe. The thing is, our storyline centers so much on activism and the movement for Black lives that knowing already what we were getting ready to film, at least for the first couple episodes of season 3, I can tell that we're going to dive even deeper into the movement for Black lives and like how we portray that on the show. And that's also where I feel like I have some similarities with Malika. She's more on the front lines than I have been in the past.
Right.
So I also love that by playing her, I've gotten that experience of like, as we're shooting the protests, and, you know, that's inspired me to protest so much more in my own life, which is amazing to do that with Black Lives Matter LA while we all, like, my character does the same. It's very meta.
Right.
Yeah. And then she's also really, because of her upbringing and needing to be so independent to get herself through life and school, she's very guarded, very, very guarded. And chosen family is really important to her. Like all of her friends in the coterie, in the communal living space she's in, are really her family. I mean, they have dinners together, they show up for each other. That's definitely something that's similar to my life. Like my friendships, because it's I'm an only child, I can tell my friendships feel like my siblings.
Oh, right.
Feel like my siblings, you know. My friends are really important to me.
That totally makes sense. And you guys are pretty close off the show too.
We're really close. Yeah, we are such a family.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, fortunate thing to like get
it
right
really
when you were about
is.
to give it all up.
I
like
know.
That's so perfect.
I know. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, you know, the crew and Maya and Sierra on the cast, they were on The Fosters together for so long.
Right.
For 6 seasons. And most of the same crew is with us on Good Trouble. And so we walked into a family. And, you know, they were such a well-oiled machine. They all loved each other so much, and they welcomed us. I mean, I give them all the credit. We were destined to be a family. Like, we didn't have a choice. Yeah.
This is how this works here.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened.
So we talked a little bit, you know, going back to the theme of the show and that not enoughness. I think probably we like to label each episode, and I feel like the overarching theme of our conversation has been the not queer enough feeling. And like, where are you with that today? Like, how does it feel now? And do you still go back and forth with that? Or are you kind of like, no, I feel like I belong to this community now? Well,
to be clear, I feel queer enough. And especially more in the past 5 years in LA, after like really finding a strong community of Black millennial queer people. I've seen so many expressions of Blackness within that group, so many different expressions of queerness and so many different expressions of masculinity and femininity that I know that there's room for me in a way that I wasn't seeing in the media before. And so I was questioning whether I was queer enough to add that label to my life.
Right.
And yeah, now I really know that I am. I will say that I find that my queerness is still questioned.
Right. So you're not queer enough for other people.
Yeah. Especially more right now as the movement for Black lives is very loud and resonant in this moment. I find that non-Black queer people, with the intention of allyship, they will say that like they can relate to what I'm moving for as a Black person because of their queerness. And when they say that, well, I know they mean well, they're not saying because of our queerness. They're saying like, oh, because I'm a gay person or because I'm a queer person, I understand a little bit of your fight. And what I do appreciate more is when my queerness and my Blackness are appreciated and acknowledged in the fight. So like, like if they're mentioning their queerness, it helps if they also mention mine, to know that like, and acknowledge that I'm fighting a lot of multiple fights.
Right.
And then in the Black community, I am really proud of the fact that we're saying more things like all Black lives matter. We're acknowledging the queerness within our community. Black Lives Matter LA is queer led, it's women led. And that has allowed me to feel queer enough, more than queer enough in the movement for Black lives. It's like my answer is a yes and no.
Yeah, no. And that's usually the case, honestly, with most of the conversations. It's like that title mostly refers to the world and what they're putting on us as individuals.
Yeah.
I a lot of times don't feel Latina enough.
Yes.
A lot of times I don't feel Black enough a lot of times. And it's because of these outside sources saying to me, no, you're not this. Yeah. You're not X, Y, or Z, or you're not what my perception of what that person should look, be, act like
Exactly.
is. And so then, yeah. So I totally get it in that sense, at least, that you can battle with it. You can be able to say, no, I feel this way now.
Yeah.
I'm good. And then still get that outside source of, wait, I don't know if you're blank enough,
Right.
It's like,
right.
Well, I do know.
Yeah.
And that back and forth. And it's just like, okay, people.
Yeah.
Which is why I wanted to do this, because I just think like it's just so interesting how, our perceptions of ourselves change, but also how much they are dictated by what other people think of us or how other people see us.
Yeah. And then so much of what other people think about us is what perpetuates a lack of representation in the media, because there's so many other people who are creating through their lens inaccurately like what our experiences are like. And then we don't see as much diversity in each, or portrayed in each group, or intersectionality really. And I love that you're having these conversations, because you're giving voice to the fact that there is diversity in each group and that there's so much crossover.
Yeah. The more I have these conversations, the more you realize, regardless of whether we're talking about race or sexuality or religion or just ageism, it all is like interconnected, and it really is. It's universal. No matter how specific it is, it's really universal.
Yeah.
And this feeling of like not enoughness is so universal.
Right.
Wow, Zuri, we covered a lot.
I know, this is good.
Is there anything else that you want to say or promote or talk about?
I just want people to wear their masks, I want everybody to wear their masks and to think about other people, who are not able to be with their families. Yeah, I mean, my father passed away during this time, and not being able to, thank you. Yeah, and the hardest part was he lives in New York and me living in LA, and not being able to be with him in his final moments, because while he didn't have COVID, he was in the hospital and no visitors were allowed in, and traveling was more banned at that time.
Yeah.
This is in May. So I'm still moving through not having had physically that final goodbye with him physically. And so I say all that to say that these precautions there really is a domino effect.
Yeah.
It's shown that it's working when people are wearing masks elsewhere, and I really hope that we can do it. And if y'all want another season of Good Trouble, you're going to have to put a mask on.
Yeah, man.
And what this chapter is teaching me, and what this podcast is teaching me, is to live fully and authentically. There's just nothing is guaranteed and everything is guaranteed, however you want to look at it. This is a really beautiful time to reset and realign with the fact that we are so enough and we have enough. I mean, what a time to have so many things stripped away from us to remind us of what it really means to be enough.
Oh, you just gave me chills. You really did. Thank you for saying that and sharing that, because that's so true. And honestly, that's the scariest thing about all this and this time and the COVID stuff, because not being able to have those last moments with loved ones, or not knowing, like, nothing is promised. And like, it's a fucking mask.
Yeah.
Just put it on your face and shut up if you're going to leave your house. Like, I don't understand it. Like, I really don't. And people trying to make it political to me is just insane.
Yeah.
It's like, this has nothing to do with politics. This is...
No. What we need to make political is the systemic issues that are causing people to be so at risk right now, and of many illnesses, and especially COVID. And, there should be nobody without health insurance during a pandemic. Absolutely nobody without income during a pandemic. That's what we need to make political. And that's what makes me so proud of the fact that we are artists. And, we're really like podcasts, film, television, digital media is like the most powerful political tool we can use.
Yeah, this really is our time to make stuff and to get the word out there, because I feel like in the beginning of this, I started to feel a little bit, which I think also happens every time I pass by like a car accident or something, this feeling of like, oh, I should have been a doctor or a nurse or something that can like physically help these people. And the same thing happened when COVID started, in March, when it was like a real disaster and everyone in the hospitals were overflowing. I had that same sense and feeling of shit, like quote unquote, not enoughness. I wish I was smarter, or I wish I had a medical degree. Then realizing, because I talked to other artists, like, no, this, we have our way of contributing. And everyone who's stuck at home right now, what are they doing? They're watching TV, they're watching movies, they're listening to music.
And they're listening for us, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for all those Good Trouble fans, yes, please wear a mask. Tell your friends to wear a mask. We want more Good Trouble.
Yeah, if you ever want to see the show again, you're going to have to put on a mask.
Well, thank you, Zuri, so much. This was lovely.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to listen to this, because the journey of feeling enough in any realm, especially particularly in my queerness, is ever growing, I'm sure. And I'm sure that I'll be in a different place than I am now with it. I'm really excited to have this be a place to reflect, or when I need a reminder that I am enough. I'm excited to listen to this, even for myself.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Not Blank Enough. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. And follow us on Instagram at NotBlankEnoughPod. Until next time, thank you for listening. Check the show notes for links and info about today's guest. This episode was produced during the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 and recorded remotely. Our show today was produced by Gracie Mercedes and Dave Hill and edited by Douglas Sarine and Colleen Beasley. Not Blank Enough is a Gumption Pictures production.